Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. U.S. demands the truth.
Mike Pence is great.
Mike Pence is a bitch! Mike Pence is a bitch!
Can I speak to Pelosi? Yeah, we're coming, bitch! Oh, Mike Pence, we're coming for you too, fucking traitor!
Donald J. Trump sent a tweet out saying that Mike Pence let us down. Mike Pence let us down, people. If you want to get something done, you're going to have to do it yourself.
The insurgents amplified President Trump's tweet attacking the vice president with a bullhorn. They were paying attention, and they also followed instructions. In fact, the insurgents were at one point, as you saw, 60 feet away from the vice president and the vice president's family. Some of these insurgents were heard saying, quote, that they hope to find Vice President Mike Pence and execute him by hanging him from a Capitol Hill tree as a traitor. And then they erected a gallows with a noose. This is what Donald Trump incited. Please take a close look at that picture. It harkens back to our nation's worst history of lynching. A president's words have the power to move people to action. These were the results. And why did the president incite such rage against the vice president? He was fulfilling his constitutional duty, as we all were that day. Vice presidents in this country have been carrying out this constitutional duty, overseeing the certification of the election results without incident, without contest, without a word, for the entirety of our nation. It's part of our peaceful transition of power in the United States. And the vice president said he reviewed the Constitution and he could not block certification as President Trump wanted him and was pressuring him to do. He told the president in a letter that morning, a few hours before President Trump's tweet, quote, I will approach this moment with a sense of duty and an open mind, setting politics and personal interests aside, and do my part to faithfully discharge my duties, our duties, under the Constitution. I also pray that we will do so with humility and faith. And the president's response to that statement was to attack Mike Pence while he was with his family under the threat of a violent mob. The vice president was following his faith, his duty, and his oath to our nation. And the vice president and I don't agree on too much in politics, but he's a man who upholds his oath, his faith, his duty, and most of all, upholds the Constitution. And Mike Pence is not a traitor to this country. He's a patriot. And he and his family, who was with him that day, didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve a president unleashing a mob on them, especially because he was just doing his job. As this was unfolding and the crowd grew more violent, the president, of course, was not alone at the White House. and the people closest to him, his family and advisors who saw this unfolding in real time, begged him, implored him to stop the attack. An aide to Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff, urged his boss to go see the president, saying, quote, "They are going to kill people. They're going to kill people." That's what those around President Trump feared. And still, nothing. It wasn't until 2:38 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the start of the siege, that Donald Trump even acknowledged the attack. And when he finally did acknowledge the attack, here's what he said. On the right, you'll see what had been happening prior to that tweet and as he sent the tweet. And on the left, you'll see exactly what he tweeted.
I'm going to stop you there for just one moment because we do have some breaking news. We want to bring in congressional correspondent Chad Pergram as this is just all developing right now. Chad, I understand the Capitol is now on lockdown.
They're definitely fired up. The chant, by the way, I heard the most today was "Fight for Trump," and that's clearly what many of them feel they're doing here.
That's what our president saw unfolding in real time, broadcast all over television. And this is what he tweeted at 2:38 p.m. Quote, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They're truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." And much has been made of the fact that in this tweet, he says, "Stay peaceful." Senators, stay peaceful? Think about that for a second. These folks were not peaceful. They were breaking windows, pushing through law enforcement officers, waving the flag as they invaded this Capitol building. This was a violent, armed attack. Stay peaceful? How about stop the attack? Stop the violence. Stay peaceful? How about you say, immediately leave? Stop. And he said, please support our law enforcement. How about he actually support our law enforcement by telling these insurgents to leave the Capitol immediately, which he never did. He didn't. Because the truth is, he didn't want it to stop. He wanted them to stay and to stop the certification. And his failure had grave and deadly consequences. By 2:45 p.m., the warnings were tragically proven correct. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an officer as she tried to break through a glass door to reach the Speaker's lobby. At this point, the pleas to Donald Trump, publicly and privately, grew even more desperate. At 2:54 p.m., Alyssa Farah, a former strategic communications director, begged the president, quote, condemn this now. You're the only one they will listen to. For our country. Mick Mulvaney, the president's former chief of staff, his right-hand man at one point, tweeted at 3:01, the president's tweet is not enough. He can stop this now and needs to do exactly that. Tell these folks to go home. He can stop this now. Tell these folks to go home. At 3:06 p.m., Rep. McCarthy appeared on Fox News. Here's what he said.
I could not be sadder or more disappointed with the way our country looks at this very moment. People are getting hurt. anyone involved in this, if you're hearing me, hear me very loud and clear. This is not the American way.
He's saying on Fox News, which the president watches, this is not the American way. Stop the attack. Representative Gallagher at 3:11 p.m., while secured in his own office, posted a video to Twitter.
Mr. President, you have got to stop this. You are the only person who can call this off. Call it off.
And then, when the president didn't answer his pleas on Twitter, Representative Gallagher went on live television.
I mean, this is insane. I mean, I've not seen anything like this since I deployed to Iraq in 2007 and 2008. I mean, this is America, and this is what's happening right now. The president needs to call it off. Like, call it off. Call it off.
Representative Gallagher, you see there, said he'd not seen anything like this since he was deployed in Iraq. The message around the president was clear from everyone. You need to call this off. Stop it. But does he? No. His next tweet was not until about 3:13 p.m. Once again, it's important to consider what was happening between Donald Trump's 2:38 p.m. tweet and his next tweet at 3:13 p.m. You'll see footage from the attack during that time on the right and Donald Trump's tweet on the left.
We've been informed that protesters have penetrated the Capitol.
This is my fucking building. Hey, we got a fucking attitude problem over here.
Tell you, the sentiment in the streets is really getting to a different level. This is spinning out of control. This is turning violent. This is getting dangerous.
Stand up for America. Now, one idea. Don't touch me, bro. Get the fuck out of here.
This isn't 10 minutes into the insurrection. This isn't just after his speech earlier that day. That's what our commander-in-chief saw happening, and that was his response. You'll notice one of the things he says to his mob, to these insurrectionists, rather than to stop or to leave, was to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you for what? Thank you for shattering the windows and destroying property. Thank you for injuring more than 140 police officers. Thank you for putting in danger all of our lives and the lives of our families. How about instead of thank you, Donald Trump on that day acted like our commander-in-chief and stopped this as only he could and told those people to leave. And here's what former Governor Chris Christie, his very good friend, said after that tweet.
Pretty simple. The president caused this protest to occur. He's the only one who can make it stop. What the president said is not good enough. The president has to come out and tell his supporters to leave the Capitol grounds and to allow the Congress to do their business peacefully. And anything short of that is an abrogation of his responsibility.
He's right. Chris Christie is right. We know how Donald Trump acts on Twitter and otherwise when he has a message to convey. In fact, I asked you to remember those tweets earlier this morning when he yelled on Twitter, "Stop the count." When he wanted to incite his supporters to show up on January 6th, President Trump tweeted 16 times between midnight on January 5th and his noon rally speech the next day. 16 times to get them to do something he wanted. And his message in those 16 times was clear. Fight. Stay strong. Be strong. But when the violence started, he never once said the one thing everyone around him was begging him to say. Stop the attack. He refused to stop it. And as Governor Christie and Representative Kinzinger and others made clear, only Donald Trump could have stopped that attack.
You know, a guy that knows how to tweet very aggressively on Twitter, puts out one of the weakest statements in one of the saddest days in American history because his ego won't let him, admit defeat.
He was not just our commander-in-chief, he had incited the attack. The insurgents were following his commands. And we saw when they read aloud this tweet, attacking the vice president. And they confirmed this during the attack, too.
Stand down, you're outnumbered. There's a fucking million of us out there, and we are listening to Trump, your boss.
Senators, ask yourself this. How easy would it have been for the president to give a simple command, a simple instruction, just telling them, stop, leave? This was a dereliction of duty, plain and simple. And it would have been for any president who had done that. And that brings me to my next point. You heard from my colleagues that when planning this attack, the insurgents predicted that Donald Trump would command the National Guard to help them. And there's a lot that we don't know yet about what happened that day. But here's what we do know. Donald Trump did not send help to these officers who were badly outnumbered, overwhelmed, and being beaten down. 2 hours into the insurrection, by 3 p.m., President Trump had not deployed the National Guard or any other law enforcement to help, despite multiple pleas to do so. President Donald Trump was at the time our Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America. He took a solemn oath to preserve, protect, and defend this country. And he failed to uphold that oath. In fact, there's no indication that President Trump ever made a call to have the Guard deployed or had anything to do with the Guard being deployed when it ultimately was. And shortly after 3:04 p.m., the acting defense secretary announced that the Guard had been activated and listed the people he spoke with prior to this activation, including Vice President Mike Pence, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, and Representative Hoyer. But that list did not include the president. This omission of his name was reportedly not accidental. According to reports, quote, Trump initially rebuffed requests to mobilize the National Guard and required interference by other officials, including his own White House counsel. And later, quote, as a mob of Trump supporters breached police barricades and seized the Capitol, Trump reportedly was, quote, disengaged in discussions with Pentagon leaders about deploying the National Guard to aid the overwhelmed U.S. Capitol Police. President Trump was reportedly, and I quote, completely, totally out of it. He made no attempt to reach the National Guard, and it was Vice President Pence, still under the threat for his life, who reportedly spoke to the Guard. President Trump's conduct confirms this too. At no point on January 6th did Donald Trump even reference the National Guard. The only thing that we heard connecting the president to the Guard was from his press secretary, who tweeted about the Guard being deployed at the president's direction over half an hour later at 3:36 p.m. And we have seen what Donald Trump does when he tries to take credit for something. And yet, even when the National Guard was finally deployed, he didn't even acknowledge it. In fact, he didn't say a word about the National Guard the entire day. Think about that. The bloodiest attack we've seen on our Capitol since 1812, and our president couldn't be bothered to even mention that help was on its way. These insurgents had been attacking our government for over 4 hours by that point, and we may have been the target, but it was the brave men and women who protect our Capitol who were out there combating thousands of armed insurgents in a fight for their lives. And that's who Donald Trump left entirely unprotected.
Hold on! Let's get there!
And this is hard to watch, but I think it's important we understand what the Capitol Police were facing, how severely they were outnumbered, while our Commander-in-Chief, whose job it was to protect and defend them, was just watching, doing nothing for hours, refusing to send help. If he wanted to protect these officers, if he cared about their safety, as he tweeted about, he would have told his supporters to leave. He would have sent help right away. And one brave officer was killed. Others took their lives after the attack. More than 140 police officers were injured, including cracked ribs, smashed spinal discs. One officer will lose an eye. Another was stabbed with a metal fence stake. They were completely and violently overwhelmed by a mob and needed help. And our Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, refused to send it. Senators, you've seen all the evidence so far, and this is clear. On January 6th, President Trump left everyone in this Capitol for dead. For the next hour, after President Trump's 3 p.m. tweet, he still did nothing. Not until 4:17 p.m., over 3.5 hours after the violence started, did our president send a message finally asking the insurgents to go home. On the right, you'll see what happened that day in the hours leading up to his pre-recorded video. On the left, you'll see his message. Let's watch.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us. From me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
This is the first time our Commander-in-Chief spoke publicly at all since the attack began, over the 3.5 hours after it started. And these are the entirety of the words the president spoke out loud to the American people or to the attackers that entire day. Nowhere in that video, not once, did he say, "I condemn this insurrection. I condemn what you did today." Nowhere did he say, "I'm sending help immediately. Stop this." Here's what he said instead. "I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen. Even after all the things we witnessed, even after all of that carnage," he goes out and tells the same big lie. The same big lie that enraged and incited the attack. He repeated this while the attack was ongoing and while we were still under threat. And here's what else he said. "Go home in peace. We love you. You're very special. Senators, you were here. You saw this with your own eyes. You faced that danger. And when President Trump had an opportunity to confront them, as the leader of us all, as our commander-in-chief, what did he tell them? We love you. You're very special." This was not a condemnation. This was a message of consolation, of support, of praise. And if there's any doubt that his supporters, these insurgents, took this as a message of support and praise, watch for yourselves.
Donald Trump asked everybody to go home. He just put out a tweet. It's a minute long. He asked everybody to go home.
Why do you think so?
Because, dude, we won the fucking day. We fucking won.
How did we win?
Well, we won by sending a message to the senators and the congressmen. We won by sending a message to Pence, okay, that if they don't do as it is their oath to do, if they don't uphold the Constitution, then we will remove them from office one way or another.
I suspect you recognize that man. You'll hear him say that we won the day. Who won the day? We know that at least 5 people lost their lives that day. The House and the Senate were in life-threatening danger, and so was the Vice President. And think of everyone else here as well. Who won on January 6th? That's not a win for America, but it is a win for Donald Trump unless we hold him accountable. Now, a little over an hour after that video, the brave members of law enforcement secured the Capitol, and we as a Congress got ready to continue certifying the results of our free and fair election. A half hour after that, President Trump issued another tweet in case there was any doubt as to whether he was happy with the people who did this, as to whether he had incited this. He commemorated what happened on January 6th. At 6:01 p.m. on January 6th, he tweeted, quote, "These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who've been badly and unfairly treated for so long." Ending with, "Remember this day forever." My colleague, Manager Cicilline, started with this tweet because this tweet shows exactly how Donald Trump felt about what happened on January 6th. These are the things that happened. He's saying this was foreseeable. He's saying, I told you this was going to happen if you certified the election for anyone else, and you got what you deserved for trying to take my power away. Great patriots, go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. He's saying to them, you did good. He's not regretful. He's not grieving. He's not sad. He's not angry about the attack. He's celebrating it. He's commemorating it. This is the entirety of what President Trump said to the public once the attack began. 5 tweets and a pre-recorded video. On the day of the most bloody insurrection we've faced in generations, our commander-in-chief, who's known for sending 108 tweets in a normal day, sent 5 tweets and a pre-recorded video. That is the entirety of President Trump's public statements from when the attack began until he went to bed on January 6th. That's all he did, despite all the people we know who begged him to preserve, protect, and defend. That was our commander-in-chief's response. He began the day with, quote, "Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore." And that's what this is all about. And he ended the attack letting us know that we got what he forewarned that morning. We will, of course, each of us, remember that day forever, but not in the way that President Trump intended. Not because of the actions of these violent, unpatriotic insurrectionists. I'll remember that day forever, because despite President Trump's vicious attempts throughout the day to encourage the siege and block the certification, he failed. At 8:06 p.m., the Senate gavelled into session, and the counting of the electoral votes continued. About an hour later, the House followed suit. And close to 4 a.m., after spending a significant part of the day evacuated or on the floor or hiding, this great body fulfilled the will of the people and certified the Electoral College vote. And I'm proud to be part of Congress. I'm proud that we ensured that the will of the American people finally prevailed on that day. And I'm proud that I and everyone in this room abided by our oath of office, even if the president didn't abide by his. And President Trump, too, took an oath as president. He swore on a Bible to preserve, protect, and defend. And who among us can honestly say they believe that he upheld that oath? And who among us will let his utter dereliction of duty stand?
Mr. President, the managers are prepared to recess for the evening and to finish our opening statement tomorrow.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Pursuant to Impeachment Rule 16, I make a motion. Statements were attributed to me moments ago by the House impeachment managers. Statements relating to the content of conversations between a phone call involving President Trump and Senator Tuberville were not made by me. They're not accurate, and they're contrary to fact. I move, pursuant to Rule 16, that they be stricken from the record.